We got the good and the bad for the Orioles on Tuesday. The good, they clobber the Twins for an 11-3 win. The bad, Tyler Wells is heading to the injured list with an elbow issue. I'll break it all down coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Orioles fans, today is Wednesday, April 17th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' 11-3 victory over the Minnesota Twins on Tuesday night, with the offense exploding to clinch the series. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from that one. And then we'll talk about the big news of the day. Tyler Wells to the 15-day injured list with elbow inflammation. What does it mean for Wells? What does it mean for the Orioles' rotation and their bullpen, both in the short term and potentially in the long term here in this 2024 season? But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. So first on this one, we're going to jump into the Orioles' victory on Tuesday night at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Make it 3 wins in a row for the O's. Make it a series victory. Final score, Orioles 11 and the Minnesota Twins 3 from the Charm City on Tuesday night. The O's, again, clinch the series, get to 11-6 on the season through 17 games. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the victory. And the first thing you need to know is Grayson Rodriguez came up huge and gave the Orioles some length in his start Tuesday when they desperately needed it. The Orioles have not been getting length from their starters. 4 straight games coming into Tuesday. They've got 5 innings or less from a starting pitcher, and 6 consecutive games coming into Tuesday in which the Orioles had not had a pitcher pitch at least a complete 6 innings. That is not what you want, especially when there were no off days in that stretch either. And because of that, for the first time, really Monday and Tuesday, the Orioles bullpen was stretched a little thin. And we didn't really have to see much of the pen because Grayson was so good. The Orioles only had to use 2 relievers on Tuesday night. But theoretically, the Orioles only had 4 of their 8 relievers in the bullpen available on Tuesday. We know Yennier Cano and Craig Kimbrell were unavailable. About 95% sure Dylan Tate was unavailable. And there was a chance even Keegan Aiken was also unavailable. Like, the Orioles may have gone into this Tuesday game with Danny Coulombe as the closer if they needed it, which I'm okay with. He's been great this year. But behind him, you were looking at Jacob Webb, Johan Ramirez, Mike Baumann. I think most would agree the Orioles' 3 worst relievers were the guys you were going to have to use to get to the 9th inning. So that wasn't ideal, but Rodriguez gave them the length they needed. Now, he could have probably pitched deeper into this game than the 6 innings he gave, because Rodriguez was through 3 scoreless innings, throwing only 23 pitches because he'd gotten multiple double plays in those first 3 innings. Either way, he goes 6 innings, 2 runs on 4 hits with 6 strikeouts and 3 walks, no homers allowed. Ended up throwing 87 pitches in the 6 innings. If it were a closer game and they needed him and they didn't want to go to those kind of lesser relievers, because remember, when he came out of the game, it was 9-2. So Brandon Hyde felt comfortable going to the lesser relievers. If it was 4-2, Grayson clearly could come back out for the 7th at 87 pitches, but he was still good. 8 hard hit balls against him, ERA at 2.63 on the season. And the changeup was just fantastic again for Grayson Rodriguez. 6 whiffs on 13 swings by Twins hitters against that pitch was his number 2 most used offering. 20 of his 87 pitches were nasty changeups. Pitch was in the zone 65% of the time. It was getting lefties, but it was also getting righties a good amount to swing and miss, which was really good. And then that cutter slash, everything was in the strike zone. He was in the zone pretty consistently in this game. And also, good piece to read in the Baltimore Banner on Tuesday. Andy Koska wrote a story about Grayson Rodriguez's pitch mix and how he's kind of changed his slider and cutter a little bit this year, and it's confused StatCast, which has basically been qualifying everything as a cutter. Same thing happened Tuesday night. It qualified him as having thrown 19 cutters and 0 sliders, although Grayson will tell you there are two different pitches in there depending on movement and velocity. They're just a little bit closer to each other than they were last year. And he did kind of the same thing Tuesday, but a good story in the banner to read. But either way, the Orioles needed that length. And that was before they got the Tuesday news that Tyler Wells, who was scheduled to be Wednesday's starter, was going on the injured list. No matter what the O's do with the start today, and we'll get into that, they're going to need more bullpen than they previously would have with Tyler Wells. So it was imperative for Rodriguez to give them innings, and he did just that. The Orioles this season are now 8-0 in games started by either Corbin Burnes or Grayson Rodriguez. They are 3-6 in games started by other starting pitchers. That is how great those top two have been for the Orioles this season. Second thing you need to know from the Tuesday win is that it was just a complete effort by the Orioles offense on Tuesday as they continue to swing the bat well. 11 runs on 15 hits for the O's on Tuesday night. Only drew 2 walks otherwise, but didn't matter because they were crushing the baseball. I mean, everybody up and down the lineup contributed. 8 of the 9 starters got a hit. The only one who didn't was Jackson Holliday, but everybody got on base because Holliday drew his first career walk in Tuesday's game as well. And you had all these 2-hit games. I mean, Anthony Santander, who had been slumping, 2 for 4, a couple of singles, an RBI, 3 hard hit balls. Huge to see that from him. Adley Rutschman gets a single and a walk, gets on base twice. I mean, you had guys out there. Colton Cowser, just won AL Player of the Week. Then he goes 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts on Monday. What does he do Tuesday? Well, he just comes back with a 2 for 4 and a couple of RBIs. Cedric Mullins had himself a hit. It was just a huge night. And I mentioned a lot of guys right there, but I didn't mention everybody because I want to get to him next. But the Orioles were just all over Chris Paddack. And the Twins, for some reason, despite Paddack, missing most of last year after Tommy John surgery, they just let Chris Paddack wear this one. He ends up going 5 1/3 innings, allowing 9 runs on 12 hits. They just let him. I mean, the O's had 3 in the second and 4 runs in the third off of Paddack. You would think at that point they just pull the starter, but the Twins bullpen has already been taxed some, and they just let him eat. It was not good. The Orioles had 11 balls that they hit over 100 miles per hour in that game Tuesday. 8 of them turned into hits themselves. They just mashed Chris Paddack. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have started Chris Paddack on my fantasy team on Tuesday night, but it is what it is, and the Orioles certainly got to him. And the third thing you need to know from the Orioles' 11-3 win on Tuesday night is that the home run ball was certainly helping the Orioles again. And the guys who I didn't mention that contributed to the lineup Tuesday already, well, those were the guys who went deep. And the Orioles, for the 4th consecutive game, had 3 home runs, 3 or more home runs, I should say, as a team. That is fairly rare. It is the first time since May of 2013. So it's been 11 years since the Orioles had 4 consecutive games where they hit 3+ homers. You guys want to go down memory lane? Let's go down memory lane. May 21st through the 24th of 2013 is the last time the Orioles did this. It started on May 21st with a walk-off win against the Yankees. Chris Dickerson hit 2 solo home runs. It went to extra innings, and Nate McLouth hit a walk-off solo homer in the 10th, I believe on Sunday Night Baseball, to snap an Orioles 6-game losing streak and beat the Yankees 3-2. Then the next night, the Orioles finished off that series with the Yankees with a 6-3 victory. May not have been Sunday Night Baseball then. Might have been like an ESPN game during the week. But the next night, they finish off the series with a 6-3 win over the Yankees. Nick Markakis, Chris Davis, and Matt Wieters all go deep. Then they go to Toronto the very next night, May 23rd. The Orioles lose 12-6, but Davis, Markakis, and Adam Jones all hit homers. And then finally, May 24th in Toronto, they come back with a win 10-6. J.J. Hardy, Chris Davis, Danny Valencia, and Adam Jones all go deep in that one. 4 straight games with 3+ homers. And now they do it here in 2024. And in this one, it started with Gunnar Henderson, who hits a 2-run shot in the second inning, 104 off the bat, 373 feet for his 5th homer of the year to put the Orioles up 3-0. Then it was Jordan Westburg, who hit a ball in the 3rd inning for a 2-run shot over Baltimore that was a breaking ball up and in that might have been a borderline strike. It could have been called a ball if he took it, like it missed up and in, but he just turned on this thing, hit it 103, 404 feet just over the big wall in left field. Westburg, who had 2 hits, 3 hard hit balls, all of them over 100. He's just continuing to have an amazing beginning to his season. And then Ryan O'Hearn, because Ryan O'Hearn is just red hot. He has now homered himself in 3 consecutive games, hitting a 2-run homer to kind of put the finishing touches on this thing in the 8th inning, a 2-run shot, 102 off the bat, 395 feet, was almost robbed by Byron Buxton. They also reviewed it for fan interference, but it was all good. And yeah, Ryan O'Hearn, dude's legit. Like, he's doing it again. It wasn't just a flash in the pan. He is doing it again this year. And this Orioles offense is doing it again right now. It is fun to watch them. They are leading the American League in home runs. As the game ended Tuesday night, they were leading baseball in home runs. They're leading the American League in runs scored. It is fun to watch this offense right now, despite even the struggles they had against some lefties recently. Fourth thing you need to know from this one is the last guy who started in this game, who I haven't mentioned yet in the offensive lineup, is James McCann. And James McCann had a nice day as well, going 2 for 4 with a single, a double, an RBI, and 2 hard hit balls. McCann quietly now, in limited playing time, is hitting 280 now on this season. And one thing I can tell you, get a 2-hit day for James McCann. If James McCann gets more than 1 hit, and he doesn't play a lot. Now he's been playing a little bit more so far this season, but I think it's what the O's did early last year. They want McCann to catch more to keep Adley's legs fresh so they can catch Adley a lot more down the stretch in the second half. It's a smart plan, I think, and it helps when McCann is hitting like this. James McCann had his second multi-hit game of the season on Tuesday night. The other multi-hit game was when he had the walk-off 2-run single against the Royals last week. James McCann had 6 multi-hit games last year in 2023, his first year with the Orioles, and 2 this year. So since the beginning of 2023, when the Orioles acquired James McCann, the O's are a perfect 8-0 when James McCann records 2 or more hits. So you can lock it in. If James McCann has a multi-hit day, the Orioles are going to win, and that is exactly what happened on Tuesday night. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from this one, the Orioles went to the bullpen in the 7th inning, and they brought out Johan Ramirez, who they acquired from the Mets late last week. He made his Orioles debut with a solid appearance Saturday against the Brewers. Second appearance for him comes on Tuesday night. And I got to say, put me on the Johan Ramirez hype train. Inning and 2/3 scoreless, 1 hit, 1 strikeout, no walks, just 2 hard hit balls on 28 pitches thrown. The command isn't amazing, but the stuff is nasty, and I can see why the Orioles went out and got him from the Mets. I mean, you're looking at a sinker fastball combo up to 97 plus. That sweeper had ridiculous movement. That thing got a couple of whiffs. And that sweeper, according to StatCast, has the 4th most horizontal movement, 4th most right to left movement of any sweeper thrown in Major League Baseball this year. It's a nice little package of pitches. I liked what he did. As I mentioned, he might be competing with Mike Baumann for that final bullpen spot once the Orioles pitchers get a little bit healthier, which we'll talk about coming up next. Well, it was Mike Baumann who came in for Johan Ramirez, and once again, did not look nearly as good. He closed out the game an inning and a third with a run, did strike out 3, but had a walk and 2 hits and just still looked shaky, and still giving the upper hand in that competition right now to my guy, Johan Ramirez. But the Orioles win at 11-3, clinched the series against the Twins. Washington Capitals clinched a playoff spot. That's kind of where a lot of the good news ended for the Orioles on Tuesday night. There was also some bad news, some bad injury news to one of their starters in Tyler Wells. And we'll get to the situation and tell you how it impacts the O's coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is really the most fun way to play fantasy sports. And with baseball season officially underway, you don't want to miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entry, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Just take your pick of more or less. That's it, more or less on any stat category on the players given by Prize Picks, and you just enter today. You can do it for the NBA playoffs as well. The play-in has already begun. NHL playoffs with the Caps in it, whatever you want. Just download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. At Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. Now, I'm a pretty competitive person. I got a competitive side. We all do. And it's a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. And it's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends on the app. I can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like in the classic game. But now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. So the Orioles win on Tuesday night, 11-3 over the Twins, was the good news. The bad news was the loss of Tyler Wells. We found out basically like 15 or 20 minutes before first pitch on Tuesday night that Tyler Wells, the Orioles' right-handed starter, is heading to the 15-day injured list with what the Orioles are calling right elbow inflammation. Now, obviously, you don't want to speculate on anything elbow-related, but the first news, you hear elbow inflammation, especially with the rash of elbow injuries going on in Major League Baseball right now, affecting the Orioles too, not just Tyler Wells, it does not sound good. Now, we got a positive update, I would say, from Brandon Hyde after the game, saying that he doesn't think it's too serious. He called it more precautionary, talked about how Wells just was a little sore, didn't really bounce back from his last start when he got hit around pretty good by the Brewers on Friday night. And they just were kind of waiting it out, seeing how it felt, and decided kind of last minute, before he was scheduled to start here the day game on Wednesday against the Twins, to put him on the injured list. Now, when you see Tyler Wells with an elbow injury, you first think about, well, he's had a major one before. Wells, when he was in the Twins minor league system, had Tommy John surgery back in 2019. And that was really the only reason why the Orioles were able to select him in the Rule 5 draft back in December of 2020. It was because Wells, who had good numbers, had barely pitched at Double-A at all, and really had mostly only pitched in High A because he'd gotten that Tommy John surgery, and then the 2020 minor league season had been wiped out. So Wells was kind of a diamond in the rough. People were afraid to pick him up because he hadn't pitched in the high minors at all. The O's scooped him up, and the rest is history. One of the best Rule 5 picks the O's have ever had. Now, getting one Tommy John surgery does not give you any kind of immunity from getting another. Plenty of players have gotten two Tommy Johns in the past, and the return rate of getting a second Tommy John is not very high. Now, again, we got good news that makes it seem like this is just more precautionary, but I will say, like, it's happened before. Spencer Strider, who had Tommy John in college at Clemson in 2019, just underwent elbow surgery again the other day. Now, it wasn't technically Tommy John. It was the kind of lesser internal brace surgery, which is like a less invasive, quicker recovery version of Tommy John that treats any kind of UCL tear. Now, we're not that far down the road yet with Tyler Wells, not even close. And again, Brandon Hyde said he's hoping it's just a few weeks, maybe it would seem like a month at most. He hopes that Tyler Wells misses and then gets the inflammation down, gets the soreness away, and gets back to the hill. That is the best case scenario. But when you hear elbow stuff for a pitcher, you have to have Tommy John surgery in the back of your mind because it is always a possibility. Now, I went back and watched the video from Friday night's start when Wells got hit around by the Brewers, lasted only 4 innings. He did grimace coming off the mound on his final pitch of the day. Now, it was his 90th pitch that got a ground out to end the 4th inning. He was probably coming out of the game either way because, again, he was at 90 pitches and being hit around through 4 innings. So it wasn't surprising that he left the game, but maybe that grimace and the shake of the arm when he was coming off the field had something to do with it as well. Now, Wells hasn't been amazing this year, right? In 3 starts, 15 in the 3rd innings, 5.87 ERA, 18 hits, 10 runs. Now, the 13 strikeouts to 3 walks have been good. Home runs, a little bit of an issue still. He's given up 3 long balls in the year and just hasn't been his usual self so far this season. And the thing is for Tyler Wells, as we start to look at, like, even if it's a short-term absence, like, what is the hit to this Orioles roster? He was probably slated to go to the bullpen at some point here soon-ish. Like, if John Means and Kyle Bradish do return fully healthy at some point, together in the next month, most people thought, and most people pretty much knew, myself included, that Tyler Wells and Cole Irvin would be the 2 pitchers that lose their rotation spots, move into the bullpen, and Means and Bradish join the rotation. So the thought was that by, mid-May, June 1st at the latest, Wells would be a full-time reliever for most of the rest of the season for the Orioles. And honestly, that's where he's been really, really good as well, both in the entirety of the 2021 season and when he came back down the stretch in the bullpen last year. He can be a high-leverage guy out of the Orioles bullpen. Now, the flip side of that is there is no guarantee that Means and Bradish both come back, are fully healthy, and can pitch the rest of the season. And if one of them can't come back or one of them goes down again, you can argue that Wells over Irvin is the next guy you would go to put right back in the rotation. It would be tough to not have him. And really, at worst, Wells is a good high leverage reliever, and it still hurts the Orioles bullpen if he misses time. So that's kind of how the impact looks on the Orioles. Now, the O's did make the roster move before the game Tuesday, and this happened last year. I got a lot of questions about this. Just wanted to clear it up. The O's clearly didn't know if Wells needed to go on the IL until Tuesday afternoon, evening, which is a good sign, right? That makes a really good sign that, yeah, he probably will come back after a short absence and hopefully be good to pitch again. Because of that, and they did it one time last year, when Ryan Mountcastle first went on the injured list last year with vertigo, they put him on the IL 15 minutes before first pitch of a game. And because of that, the only guy they had around, I believe, was Mark Colesbury, the third catcher who was with the team on the taxi squad. And you don't want to play down a player, so they just activated Colesbury on the team. The Orioles did the exact same thing here. We're getting questions like, why are they carrying a third catcher? Is Adley okay? Is McCann okay? Are they going to run with three catchers? No. They have done this before. They're doing it again. David Banuelos, who the Orioles signed to a minor league deal this offseason, was with the team as the taxi squad catcher. Whether at home or away, every single Major League Baseball team gets to carry a taxi squad catcher. It's a third catcher that travels with the team who's not on the active roster, but is there just in case a catcher goes down, so you can have someone there immediately to activate to the roster. They can also help you catch bullpens and just warm up the pitchers as well. So Banuelos was there. Because it was 15 minutes before first pitch, the Orioles obviously couldn't get anybody from Norfolk, and Norfolk is down in Jacksonville playing the Jumbo Shrimp, so you're definitely not getting anyone here from Florida. So they just activated Banuelos to make sure that they didn't play a man down and still played with 26 players. And it ended up being a cool moment for David Banuelos because the game got out of hand, and Banuelos got to pinch hit in the eighth inning. Now he flew out to right, but that was his major league debut. Banuelos had never played in the big leagues. The O's give him a shot that maybe he never would have gotten. Maybe he never would have debuted in the big leagues. Yeah, he didn't get his hit, but he gets to be on a big league field. He was so appreciative, called it an amazing moment, talking to the media after the game. Really cool for him. Now, the other part of the roster move was Banuelos was not on the 40-man. The 40-man was full. So the Orioles did have to DFA infielder Livan Soto to make room for Banuelos. Soto was just claimed from the Angels off waivers a couple days ago. O's had him back in the offseason, DFA'd him. He went to the Angels. They brought him back. Funny enough, Soto was in Norfolk, actually hit a two-run homer earlier in the day on Tuesday in the Tides game. I believe it was in the eighth inning to tie the game at 3. He gets DFA'd. The O's kind of like him, so I think they'll hope he clears waivers and stays in AAA Norfolk. But again, Banuelos, he will be optioned or most likely DFA'd on Wednesday when the Orioles bring up another pitcher to fully replace Tyler Wells on the roster again. It's going to be one day for Banuelos, and it is cool that he was able to get into the game. So the big question is, who's that pitcher going to be? Will the O's bring someone up to start on Wednesday? Will they bring up a reliever and go a bullpen game? Would it be a different pitcher for the short term than it is for the long term to replace Wells? These are all questions I'm going to answer to finish off the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks. And it's all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So as the Orioles lose Tyler Wells here, 15-day injured list stint with right elbow inflammation, we hope, and the way Brandon Hyde talked after the game makes it seem like it'll be a shorter absence for Tyler Wells. But either way, they're going to have to fill his spot at the very least for 2 or 3 weeks here until he can return. Now, the question is, what do the Orioles do in the rotation? Because Wells is a starter that they lost. Well, one thing we know they won't do, at least yet, is bring up Kyle Bradish. However, I want to mention him because Bradish did make his first rehab start on Tuesday night in AA Bowie. And it went pretty well. 3 scoreless innings, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts, no walks, 44 pitches in his first rehab start. O's said he'd go from 40 to 50 pitches. So it went to plan. The stuff looked good. John Mioli was there from the Banner. Steve Molesky from Masson reporting that fastball was 95 to 96 on both the stadium gun, and I think Mioli was sitting with the scouts. They had it on the guns as well. That's Bradish's regular velocity, so that's really, really good to see in his 3 innings. Great start for Bradish. Not ready to come up today and start, but a great sign for him coming back from that partial UCL tear. We will see if he can come back. Man, I hope he does. I am still skeptical because there is a tear in the UCL, and that is not good. But this is a huge another step forward for Kyle Bradish. But it's not going to be him. And Tyler Wells, as I mentioned, was slated to start Wednesday's game, today's day game against the Twins. And there's no one else currently in the rotation who would be on regular rest because the Orioles have not had an off day since last Monday, April 8th. And because of that, anybody who would try to start would be on short rest, and you're just not going to do that. So you have to look to either a bullpen game or go outside. Let's at least start with the bullpen game, the possibility of it. Now, you probably wouldn't have Johan Ramirez or maybe even Mike Baumann to use in this game, but you would have everyone else most likely available, and you could call up essentially a 9th reliever and have 7 relievers to try and get through a bullpen game. It's certainly possible. It also helps that Thursday is an off day. So the best time to do a bullpen game is right before an off day. That is by far the best time to do it. So I'm sure the Orioles are considering it. And as of recording right here, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time Tuesday night, Brandon Hyde has still said the starter for Wednesday is TBD. So I'm kind of going to go through all the scenarios here. The issue with the bullpen game is you would probably want Nick Vespi to be the guy you would recall to do the bullpen game. Not only is he maybe your best reliever in AAA right now, he can also give you length, like 2 or 3 innings. The issue is, and the O's couldn't have seen this coming because the Tides played at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, so they were playing even before Wells went on the IL. But Nick Vespi pitched 2 innings in relief for Norfolk on Tuesday. He's not coming up Wednesday to do a bullpen game. The other guys that pitched in relief were Wanderson Charles with an inning, Caleb Ort with an inning. Those guys could still be options, but more likely it would be guys like Jonathan Heasley, Brian Baker, or Matt Crook, who are all already on the 40-man roster. None of them pitched Tuesday and could honestly, at least for Baker and Heasley, both give you multiple innings out of the bullpen if you needed it for any kind of bullpen game the O's could do Wednesday. That is certainly a possibility. But if they want to go with more of a regular starter, the next name that you go to is John Means, because Means is on his rehab assignment right now and is scheduled to make another rehab start, his 4th rehab start today on Wednesday with the Norfolk Tides. So you're like, well, he's already scheduled to start. You could just add him to the roster. And it is possible, but I'm not sure the O's want to do it yet. Now, he last pitched last Thursday, April 11th. So again, he's fully rested. He's preparing to start here on Wednesday. In that last start in Norfolk, 3 innings, 2 runs, 2 hits, 3 Ks, 2 walks, and a home run through 61 pitches. His fastball was 90 to 92, like maybe a little tick down from what we're used to seeing from John Means. Now, I would think the Orioles are looking for around 75 pitches in his rehab start here on Wednesday after throwing 61 last week. So I don't know if they would want to go to Means in the middle of his rehab when you're bringing a guy back. And I know it's not a true rehab. This is more of like a delayed spring training that Means is going through right now to try and get ready for the 2024 season. I just don't know if the O's would push him. They could and just say, hey, John, we're trying to get 4 innings out of you. And then the bullpen will cover the rest of it before the off day. That's certainly a possibility. Would not rule that out at all. I think the more likely thing for John Means is here, you have him make the rehab start in Norfolk. You try to get him to 75 plus pitches. And then you say, okay, that is your final rehab start. And you target next Tuesday, April 23rd. That is the next time the Orioles would need a starter in the Tyler Wells spot. And you say, hey, Means, could you be ready by then to maybe give us 4 or 5 innings max? And then you kind of rejoin the rotation. I think that is totally possible for John Means. And what that would do would mean you only have to fill the Tyler Wells spot 1 time through the rotation, and then you get Means back. That would kind of be huge. And, we talked about it already. If it is any kind of long-term thing for Tyler Wells, you have Bradish and Means to fill in anyway. You also got Cole Irvin still there. But eventually, any kind of long-term thing could be an opening for one of the prospects, Chase McDermott, Cade Povich, Justin Armbruster, all AAA. However, none of those guys are options for this Wednesday start coming up today. And the reason is they'd all be on short rest. Chase McDermott literally started yesterday on Tuesday. Cade Povich started on Saturday. Justin Armbruster started on Sunday, all in AAA Norfolk. None of them would be on regular rest to make this start. So we'll shut that down right now. It could be some of the young guys later in the process who get a chance. Don't think they're ready anyway. And specifically, they're just not on enough rest to start. So really, unless the O's go bullpen game, which is possible, or John Means still on rehab in the big leagues plus bullpen game, which is also possible. They've done that before. Actually, they did that with Tyler Wells a couple of years ago, so it wouldn't put it out of the question. The other two options are Albert Suarez and Bruce Zimmerman. Both have been working out of the AAA Norfolk bullpen. Let's start with Suarez, who is not on the 40-man roster. He was kind of the darling of spring training, 34-year-old righty, hasn't been to the big league since 2017, was pitching in Korea, was pitching in Japan. O's brought him in on a minor league deal. 15 and a third innings in AAA, 5.87 ERA, but he has 17 strikeouts, just one walk in that stretch. Now, he had two pretty good AAA starts to begin the year, and he was really good in spring training, fastball up to 97, major league stuff. But he started on Friday for AAA Norfolk, and although he would be on regular rest, he did not pitch well. 4 and a third innings, 10 hits, 5 runs. Now it was 7 Ks to 1 walk, but I don't know if you want to bring him up after giving up 10 hits in a AAA game. Now, clearing the 40-man spot for Suarez shouldn't be too much of an issue because you could probably just DFA David Banuelos, who you just activated for one game. That would be easy to clear that spot. But do the Orioles really want to start Suarez after having a rough AAA start? And the other thing is, if you believe that John Means will be back next week, or at worst, you need to fill 2 Tyler Wells spots, right? 1 spot, 2 spot, then you bring up Means. Albert Suarez, I think the Orioles really like. And if they were to call him up and then try to send him back down, I don't think they could option him. I think he would have to be sent through waivers and DFA'd. I don't think the O's want to give up Suarez for nothing. And if they're going to call him up, they want to have him be here for longer than just maybe one start. So I'm not sure they would want to do that. And the other thing is, Suarez right now is scheduled to start on Friday for AAA Norfolk. Now, he is fully rested, but it can be tough in your routine during the week to have your start moved up 2 days and go from a AAA start on Friday to a big league start on Wednesday. That can be tough as well. And that is all why I think my official prediction, again, here at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday night, my official prediction is that Bruce Zimmerman comes up and starts this game for the Orioles. Now, the one thing that makes it easy, he is already on the 40-man roster, so you don't have to make a 40-man move. He's scheduled to start on Thursday for Norfolk, so you'd only be moving his start up one day, and he last pitched last Thursday for the Tide, so he is fully on good rest. He also had his best outing of the year in his last one for Norfolk. 5 innings, 2 runs, but both were unearned on 2 hits. He struck out 6. He walked 3. He does have a 7.53 ERA on the season, but he's got 18 strikeouts and 14 and a third innings in AAA. And although Bruce Zimmerman's ceiling is not super high anymore, the Orioles kind of know what they're getting out of Bruce Zimmerman, right? You're not asking him to do a lot. You're saying, hey, Bruce, can you give us 5 innings? Can you give us 4 or 5 innings in a spot start, preferably 5, and then we turn it over to the bullpen before an off day and try to sweep a series? That's really what you go here. And then after the game, you option Zimmerman back to AAA. Maybe you call up a reliever for a few days, and then you bring up John Means next week to kind of reactivate him and get him back into the rotation. That's what I think they do. I think it's Bruce for a day. He starts. We'll see how it goes. They send him down. They probably recall Vespi for a few days, and then they bring up John Means to rejoin the rotation next week. Now, something could change. It could be Suarez. It could be Means right now. It could be a bullpen day. But those are kind of all of the Orioles' options. And I just think because Zimmerman is so easy to bring up, send back down, not that they're punting the game at all. Like, Zimmerman still has some good stuff. That changeup's getting better and better. They just kind of know who he is as well. And it does make it nice that not only did the O's already win the first 2 games of this series, but they also have that off day on Thursday. So even if they don't plan to do a bullpen game, but it is Zimmerman or it is Suarez and those guys struggle early, if they turn to the bullpen in the 3rd or 4th inning, you can still kind of max out the pen and know you have that full off day coming up on Thursday. So it's going to be an interesting scenario. Hopefully you are listening to this or watching this well before the 1 o'clock start of Wednesday's game, because we've got a quick turnaround here for this day game. And this information could be somewhat out of date even by the time you get to it, because maybe they already went to their guy, already made their decision by the time you're listening. Game's already started, whatever it is, but hope you still enjoyed this episode and kind of a look into the decision-making process for Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde as they make this decision with an unfortunate and kind of unexpected injury to one of their starters here. Either the Orioles will play a baseball game. No matter who's starting it, they will play a baseball game on Wednesday. The Twins and the O's at 1:05 p.m. Eastern time. Final game of a 3-game set. O's going for the sweep. Pablo Lopez is going for the Twins. He is truly the ace of this staff. Hasn't been amazing this year. 4.86 ERA through 3 starts so far this season. It's a nasty changeup, but he's coming off his best start. 7 innings of 1-run ball with 7 Ks and no walks against the Kansas City Royals is how he started his season, I should say. His last start actually was not good. Gave up 5 runs in 4 innings against the Tigers. We'll see if the O's can get to him on Wednesday. And then I'll be back on Thursday recapping Game 3 between Baltimore and Minnesota, and also taking a look at what decision the O's did make in terms of the starter on Wednesday, and talk about how that fits into this whole puzzle of replacing Tyler Wells, both short-term and maybe even long-term in the Orioles rotation. Till then, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube page, and I'll be back with you tomorrow. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.